Zee Cohen-Sanchez. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. People should be familiar with you and the work you do by now, but if not, why don't you go ahead and describe yourself politically and also how your grassroots movement got started? The reason I ask is because I feel like this binary of left and right is pretty unhelpful, especially on the left. I think when you say you're left of center, or if I say I'm left of center, there's a lot of assumptions that can be tagged on there. And I think this might come out more in the podcast, but um, sometimes that can mean a lot of things. So why don't
Yeah.
you, just for us, describe yourself politically and what is the Unfuck America tour?
Yeah. So just to give some background, so I started in politics around 2010, and I worked in and out of electoral politics since then. So obviously, in the past 15 years, a lot, a lot has changed. When I started, like MAGA wasn't a thing. The Republican Party was, I mean, I hate to say it, but sane, because it didn't feel
Yeah,
like they were sane at the
yeah.
time, but comparatively now, they were absolutely sane. And, I was very lucky. I ended up on AOC's first campaign back in 2018 when she beat Crowley. I worked on a lot of municipal races before that in New York City, so got to sort of see the process of primarying and how that works and how to do that successfully. And then I also got the opportunity to help Bernie Sanders campaign back in 2015, 2016. And after AOC's win, I think it really sort of changed me fundamentally in understanding how to actually shift voters. And obviously, AOC did that through field operations, which is what I believe to be the most effective thing in campaigning, is actually getting out and talking to voters face to face. And we would see that we would have massive shifts in the way that people think after having actually talked to somebody. And so after that, I ventured out to start my own business, my own firm. It's an all women owned and operated organization, which was interesting because there are not a lot of women in the political space, yet alone running these kinds of firms. So we got to experience a lot through that. And it wasn't until after we just lost this past election that I decided that I was going to have to get much more involved at a much deeper level and really step up my game, because what I found was that the Democratic Party, we have, and I will say we, because I feel like I've worked within the party. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, the Democratic Party, I have to take
Hmm.
responsibility in that too.
Yeah.
But um, we've not learned our lessons over the years. We've not done right by the people of this country. And I think that that was a huge reflection in the fact that we had somebody that was extremely qualified for the position, Kamala Harris, that lost
Hmm.
against a 34 count felon,
Yeah.
a rapist. I mean, all the things that Trump is, right?
Hmm.
So that's when I decided that we would need to really look into who we lost and why we lost them. And obviously, we lost almost every single demographic.
Hmm.
But the one that was the most shocking to me as a professional campaigner was the youth vote. The fact that the youth vote, which we've always historically relied on as a Democratic Party, we never target the youth because we don't need to, shifted 9 points to the right last year.
Hmm.
And a big reason for this was Charlie Kirk, who has, we could say all the things we want about Charlie Kirk and how crappy of a person he is, but at the end of the day, he's one of the best organizers of our time.
Yeah.
He's started over 10,000 chapters for high school students across the country for Turning Point. Even more than that in college chapters. So they're consistently doing programming for him. And then on top of that, he visited over 300 college campuses in 2024. So to me, that was something that we had to pay attention to. And that's why we started the Unfuck America tour.
Yeah, yeah. People that listen to my podcast will know I've had two run-ins with Charlie Kirk. He came to TCU about 2 or 3 years ago, Texas Christian University, and me and my wife went to go and see what it was all about, because I think it's hard not to keep up with him on social media. So at TCU, I think a lot of his university stops, he gets a lot of resistance. At TCU, it was pretty much all rank and file. I think me and my wife
Yeah.
were the only ones not not cheering him on. And I went up and we had we had a back and forth, and I think it kind of dissolved into nuanced, very precise ideas. You know, it went from transgenderism to free will, and I don't think I competed well against the one-liners, and my clip went viral, and I had all my high school friends from South Texas sending me the clip, being like, "Is this you?" And then I think 2024 on his tour, I went again. He came to UNT Dallas, so I went up there, and he remembered me, and I had a lot of evil things to say, but the first thing he said was, "I'm sorry your clip ended up being as clipped as it was. We didn't
Mm.
mean to cut it that way." And I was thinking, damn, I wish he didn't apologize because I had so many worse things I wanted to tell him, but I ended up being pretty civil, I guess. Yeah,
Just love
he's
going viral. Don't let him fool you.
yeah, no, he's yeah, I knew he was happy with the results of the video of me, and
Course.
uh, I one thing I confronted him on the second time was he always plays it quite safe compared to his followers. I feel like he doesn't take he says a lot of insane things, but he doesn't take the step to make the most insane statements. Meanwhile, his followers, he kind of gives them the tools or the content to make the insane statements themselves. I know he reads his comment section. I know he sees a lot of the stuff going in there.
Yeah.
We could talk about Charlie here in a second. Um, I know you started the Unfuck America tour, and I guess the idea is it follows Charlie and sort of counters him at a lot of his stops. How did that get started?
So yeah, I mean, the whole goal with the Unfuck America tour isn't just simply to follow around Charlie Kirk. I know that that's been like a lot of what people have said, but it's
Hmm.
more so to give college students and now high school students, because he's also targeting high school students, an alternative. And so what we do is, Charlie goes out there and he has his "Prove Me Wrong" 10, and the idea behind his strategy, which I think is brilliant as a political strategist, is that he uses these "Prove Me Wrong" TEDs and these quote unquote viral moments to then raise money to then do voter registration and to
Hmm.
fund these college chapters, right?
Yeah.
Which is brilliant because
Every time I went, he has all of his workers or the students part of the chapter. They walk around with like these piles of voter registration clipboards, and like they
Mhm.
will. I mean, they'll be wading through the crowd, kind of recruiting.
Yeah,
It's
getting people to
impressive.
sign it. Yeah, it's very impressive. And not only that, but they're targeting key races across the country. So for example, when we were in Florida, which is really what started this whole idea, because when we were in Florida for the special elections that just happened in District 6 and in District 1, we flipped Escambia County blue for the first time in 30 years. And the way that
Hmm.
we did that was by expanding the electorate, was by registering voters. And the group that was in competition with us, because they knew that Democrats were out there registering, was Turning Point USA. And they had registered something around 1,500 people, and we registered 1,000. But the difference is that we had literally just started. Our package just opened. We'd raised something like $250,000. Like we did not have a lot of money. Meanwhile, Turning Point USA has $100 million. So we were
Yeah.
thinking, well, if we can be on point with Turning Point USA and we could even potentially beat them in voter
Hmm.
registration, why not just take what Charlie's doing and replicate it for the left? And so that's why I think the Unfuck America tour has been so successful so far, is because we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just
Yeah.
continuing on what Turning Point has already done.
So has Charlie said anything to you directly, or has he mentioned you? I think with a lot of these bigger content creators, you can think of some of the bigger mavericks on the left, maybe like Destiny. It seems like Charlie Kirk is not willing to go near you guys with like a 10-foot pole. Has he
Yeah,
mentioned you, or has he said anything to you? It's
no, Charlie will never directly sit down with me and have a conversation. He has mentioned me at least several times. I mean,
mhm.
he did like a whole TikTok video about the microaggressions and all of that stuff. Um, Interestingly, he was kind of on my side, I think,
Yeah.
with that, which is a whole other story. But obviously, he was using it for evil intentions, right? Like he was
Yeah,
using
of
it
course.
as an example to show that the left can't get their shit together. And so we will never succeed. We will never beat Turning Point because how could we ever beat Turning Point if we're constantly turning on each other,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Yeah.
great, is a great narrative, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, he definitely knows who I am. I mean, he's definitely mentioned me, but he will never sit down and have a conversation with me, I don't
Have you
think.
considered getting in line at some of these events and just making your way to the front and saying something? Have you
They won't
considered
let
that?
you. They won't let you because what happens is that they Turning Point USA has got a list of creators and of people that are, I guess, blacklisted, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm definitely one of the people on those lists. And I can tell you that for certain because when I was at the Student Action
You
Summit.
guys had your thing revoked.
Yes, we had it revoked, but not only that. So most people don't know this, but my real name isn't Z. My real name is Elizabeth, right? So whenever I'm putting things on like official documentation, I go by Elizabeth. And so I got into the event based on that because I guess they hadn't put together that that's my real name. So I actually was in there for almost, I guess, like 2.5 hours, like somewhere around that. And then a security guard pulled me up in the crowd when I was watching Charlie's thing and he said, "Hi, are you using a fake name?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Well, we're going to have to go downstairs." And so that's where we discovered that it is not just like a name on a list. They definitely have pictures. They identify
Wow.
these people. And it's definitely the same thing at his college tour, because on the college tour, when we were at Texas A&M, his staff specifically knew our content creators and made sure that they couldn't get to the front of the line so that they couldn't challenge Charlie directly.
So, assuming that these profiles of all of you guys stay consistent, does that make the Unfuck America Tour's efforts much more difficult? I mean, do you guys operate right outside the venue now, or are you sending in, maybe new content creators, or how does this look like going forward?
Yeah, so it definitely makes it more challenging. Like for example, at Texas A&M, we booked a spot to be right next to Charlie, 20 feet away, and then Charlie's team got our passes revoked 24 hours before the event, right? So and then I would say it really depends on the school because, for example, we were going to go to University of California, San Diego, obviously a more liberal school. And they were really helpful about like helping us. And they were like
Yeah,
really pushing for us to be there versus if you're at a place like Texas A&M where you're dealing with a lot of MAGA staff,
yeah,
it does get a lot more difficult. So it's not to say it's impossible. I mean, we still went to the Freedom of Square place that Charlie was at because it is a freedom square. We are allowed to
yeah.
express your freedom of speech as long as you're not disrupting an event, which is never our intention. We never want the optics of ever disrupting Charlie.
Sure.
That's not the purpose of what we're doing. But we do want people to have alternate information and true information. So if that means we have to be outside the event, that's what we'll do. If that means we have to be at another place on campus, that is definitely what we'll do. But we're not going to use that to like deter us from doing our
Yeah,
work.
yeah. So I when I was thinking of how I would take our conversation today, I'm so bitter towards Charlie Kirk, and I find him when I watch his content or when I see him on my dreaded Twitter feed, I get angry because it's so low tier and so elementary. And I was thinking here, I'm like, okay, when I talk to Z, I don't want to give Charlie this much oxygen. I don't want to talk about him that much. He's just so aggravating and profoundly uninteresting. However, I can't I can't run away from the facts that this guy's. I mean, he's huge. I mean, this guy, as much as I want to brush him aside, as much as I want to get past what he is, as much as I don't want to just let him rage bait me from a distance, this guy, talks to Donald Trump, President of the United States, most powerful man in the world, talks to him regularly.
Yeah.
Um, talks to his son even more. Goes on, flights with JD Vance. And I think I saw something about him having some role in the Air Force now, like of all something like that. It's insane.
Yeah.
And so I guess just I have to respect the size of him, and I want to ask now is why is he? You spent a lot of time analyzing him, the way he operates, the way his team operates. Why is he so dangerous? And also, do you think he believes himself. I mean, maybe we'll get into Epstein a little bit. I think Epstein as a topic is boring. We can talk about it a little bit, but I'm watching his. I listened to him for 2 years talk about Epstein, and now it's Epstein is boring to him. Do you think he believes himself? Do you think he knows it's a grift? Is he doing it for money? Does he care?
Oh,
What?
of course. I mean, like, listen, Charlie has never had a real job, right? Like, for those of you who don't know the history of Turning Point, I mean, Charlie's been doing this since he was 18 years old. So he's never gotten out there and done like hard physical labor. Not to say that it's not hard to build an organization. It absolutely is, but he has never had to work for somebody, right? Like he's never had to be a working class American. He owns several different properties. He owns
And
like
I
a
don't.
beach property, you know.
I don't know the name of the person, but I think he does have a billionaire that donates. I don't know the
Yes,
name,
yes, he
but
does. Yeah. So his original donor, who is no longer alive anymore, he actually was the reason Turning Point was even able to start. Right. So I'm not sure if he was a billionaire, but he definitely was like a high up millionaire. I mean, he had
mm-hmm.
plenty of money to get Turning Point USA started, and he had actually found Charlie I believe, at a high school event where Charlie was speaking, and I guess he saw something in Charlie where he said, "I want to invest in this kid. I really want to see him build something." So yeah, I mean, of course, is Charlie conservative and does he believe in conservative values? Sure, I like completely believe that. Does he say things that Trump tells him to say because Trump tells him to say it and he knows his place? Abso-fucking-lutely, right? Like we saw that with the Epstein stuff. And also, it doesn't hurt the fact that he has all these properties and millions of dollars, and he's doing this to make himself personally rich as well. So yeah, I think that there is definitely an element of that of him not believing the own things that he says.
So you do a lot of campaigning and you do the door to door thing and you sort of meet voters where they're at. Uh, we all have theories of why Trump won and why the left lost. I mean, um, some people say it was Palestine and Kamala didn't cater enough to the Palestinian people. Some people say that's because Kamala was, or I'm going to call her Harris. Harris didn't focus enough on the economics. She was too robotic, whatever. Everyone has a theory, but you on the ground, coordinating, campaigning, speaking to people, why do you think she lost? I don't ask this to everyone, but I think you might have a valuable view of the optics here. Why do you think Harris lost?
You know, Well, I think that she lost for a couple reasons. I think one is
Of
obviously we
course.
can't ignore the fact that almost every incumbent lost worldwide because of the devastation that
Yeah,
COVID did on the economy, right? Like that
yeah.
that is part of it. In saying
Yeah.
Yeah, in saying that, was there a complete mismanagement of money at the top of her campaign? Absolutely. I mean, there were things that we were spending on in swing states that to me as a campaigner didn't only like not make sense to me, but almost to the point where it felt fraudulent. Like it literally felt as if they were trying to lose. And
That
then,
podcast scandal or
yeah, I was
something
just
like
gonna
that.
say, yeah,
Like,
exactly. The whole
uh,
podcast and with Pod Save America, where her team were like, yeah, I mean, we knew that we weren't gonna win. And it's like, what? I mean, to me as a campaigner, that is like it's devastating to hear that there's so much talent out there in the campaign world, but yet we keep hiring people like Jen O'Malley. And yeah, I'm gonna say it. Like people like that should not have a place in Democratic campaigns. If you go
hmm,
into this thinking you're not even gonna win a race, I mean that to me is ridiculous.
yeah.
Um,
What
yeah.
looked really awkward was Trump would almost get paid. I think in some cases he did get paid to go on podcasts. Meanwhile, Harris was paying people to let herself onto podcasts.
Yeah, I mean,
Which,
and then there were like,
yeah,
no Joe Rogan, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
there was just a lot of mistakes. And I'm not going to say, oh, she lost because she didn't go on Joe Rogan or something. Like,
sure,
that's ridiculous, right? But like,
yeah.
but I think that there's accumulation of these things that contribute to the fact that she lost and the fact that we
Hmm.
lost every single swing state. Every single swing state, even the swing states that we were predicted to win, like here in Nevada, where we've seen us traditionally trend blue over the past decade, completely reversed and went red. And Arizona, right? And like all of these states that we had great hope for in the beginning of the election cycle, we lost every single one of them.
Hmm.
So we can't just say that it was because all incumbents lost across the world because of COVID. I mean, I think that that's just a piece of it.
Yeah, yeah. I had not so erudite. She was joining you guys on a couple of your stops, I think. So
Yeah.
I just had her on recently, and we had a really good conversation. But she corrected me right off the bat because I said, "Well, the left seems to infight often," and I told her I think that's good in one sense because I think infighting is a sign that we're willing to criticize our own. We're not a cult, which I think is
Yeah.
so it looks good if I can criticize someone else on the left. It's a sign that we're a little bit more self-aware, maybe. And I said, yeah, but when I look at the right of center, they don't infight at all. And Kyla corrected me really quick. She said, no, 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 they do infight, and they infight often, but they rally when it matters. When it comes time to vote, they do all fall in line. Uh,
And they don't infight publicly, which is
yes.
very important because that's
Yeah.
something that we can't seem to help but do on the left. To us,
Mhm.
everything has got to be public, even the smallest, tiniest little things.
Yeah. I was listening to a panel speak about some of the infighting that happened on the Unfuck America tour, and someone noted that, hey, when we look at the right, they are not infighting as much as we are. And one of the people that was, I guess, against you was saying, well, we don't want to be like the right. We don't want to be like them. The correction was, look at the way they're mobilizing. Look at their coordination. Look at their, look at how much they can mobilize. Of
I want to
course
be
we
like
want to.
the
I want to
right.
be like that. Yeah. You're like, of
Yeah,
course we
speak for
do.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you make of the rights infighting now? Do you think Epstein is going to be a big knock to them? I noted that I thought the tariffs would be a big split. It was not. I think we just saw the story of this husband who was, MAGA to the core. His wife is getting deported back to Iran.
Yeah,
He keeps his flags up, which is at that point it's like you ask yourself, like, what could Trump do to lose your
nothing.
support? Yeah,
Yeah, no.
what do you think of the right's state of infighting, or if there isn't infighting, what do you think of like their whole apparatus right now?
Yeah, I mean, at the Student Action Summit, it was really interesting because Charlie had started his comments about Epstein literally the day before the SAS event. And so going into the SAS event, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. They're all going to be fighting, right? Because Charlie has always said that we should be releasing the Epstein
Yep,
files. Now, all of a sudden, he
yep,
changed his mind the day before one of the biggest events of the year for Republicans, where everybody's getting together. And I will say that there was a lot of skepticism in the event while I was there. I talked to a lot of people that were not happy with where that was, and they admitted that this was a very big issue for them, and maybe even an issue that would maybe take them out of the Republican Party and just either be non-voters or just sort of, I guess, be apolitical, because none of them actually suggested that they vote for a Democrat.
yeah,
And it was interesting because Charlie actually switched his position at the event. So I guess that there was so much heat from whatever was happening that he literally switched his position. So
really.
yeah, but I
Mm,
don't think, I mean, even with all that conversation that was happening in there, it didn't feel like the way that the left infights more than anything, because I didn't really hear anybody necessarily defending that we shouldn't release the Epstein files. So I think that everybody was, for the most part, on the same page that they should.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I don't think that it was going to ever be an issue that was going to break apart the right or anything like that.
Unfortunately, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Um, So one thing I mentioned it to Kyla briefly, but we didn't stay on it that much. But you, as someone who speaks to voters on the ground, I'm curious how you sort of navigate this. When I look at the right and a lot of their positions, I don't want to even say the right. When I look at MAGA and a lot of their positions, a lot of them can be given to the undecided voter or whoever really, really quickly in like one sentence.
Mhm.
So, for example, abortion. I mentioned it's well, life begins at conception, therefore, um, any abortion is murder. Like, boom, that's like really simple. It's kind of understandable. Like, yeah, I do think it's life, and I don't want to kill life. Okay, yeah, it's murder. Okay. And it's like, it's boom, that was easy. Or saying it's illegal to come over the border, you don't want open borders. I'm gonna note I have never met anyone on the left who wants open borders. I haven't met that person. I
Yeah.
hope I hope I don't. I don't know when that became our position, but I guess it's our position. Um, it's like, okay, people should come here legally. Yeah, okay. I agree. People should probably come here legally. It's so easy. It's so like you can give that to your subject like really, really quickly. Meanwhile, on the left, it's like, okay, well, we're not open borders, but we do have an asylum process. Maybe the asylum process is getting abused. How do we reform the asylum? Like, that's a lot. Or when
Yeah.
does life begin? Okay, well, consciousness and experience, like, that's a lot. And the
Yeah.
economy, it's like, okay, well, we're not communists, but maybe we have some more like quasi socialist ideas, and how do taxes go into funneling particular programs, and how do you qualify? That's a lot of work compared to, you should work for your money, and if you have a lot of money, it's because you're rewarded for your work. It's like
Right.
the messaging is like so easy on the right. Like, how do you, when you're speaking to the undecided person, I'm assuming you've met a lot of undecided people. I don't know how people are undecided, but you've met them. How do you address these hot button issues in a way that's easy for them to understand without insulting their intelligence or making them feel like they need a really big degree?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And, it's funny because there are so many people in this country that are undecided. And it's not because they are like actually undecided between the two candidates. It's because they are literally just apolitical, right? Like they're just living their lives, they're going to work, they're getting their kids, and they're scrolling on TikTok, and they're not on political TikTok, so they don't get that type of content. And so then when it comes to election season, they haven't had these conversations. And so it's I mean, that's really what a lot of our country is. And that's why, like, I
Mm,
think we have so much hope for this country and expanding the Democratic base because there's so many of those people. But I think that a great way to do it is to really follow like the Bernie Sanders platform, where it was very, very simple, right? Like, housing is unaffordable. Let's make it affordable. We need a Medicare for all system. People shouldn't go bankrupt when they have to go to the doctor, right? Like, being very and that's why I feel as if like if Obama were to run today on like an ACA platform like he did back in 2008, I just feel like our country has dumbed down too much to be able to really comprehend that, right? Even though maybe a lot of people would agree with it. So I do think we got to get down to a simpler platform. And I think we need to absolutely get rid of divisive issues that don't really matter in a lot of
yeah.
ways, right? Like, I mean, I think that, like you said, like with abortion, right? I think that we can come to an agreement with most Republicans. I think Trump is something like 15 weeks, right? Is like where he stands personally. And a lot of Republicans are there, right? There's not a lot of Republicans that are like, the second you have you
Yeah.
conceive, like that is a baby, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't, there's not a lot of Republicans like that. So if we can agree, if we can sort of meet in the middle and say, okay, 15 weeks maybe, let's negotiate that, maybe 18 weeks, right? Like,
Sure.
that's pretty good. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's like a pretty, and then we don't have to go through this whole, this whole conversation around consciousness and when it becomes a
Yeah.
baby. And because all we do in that process is we lose religious voters who are a lot of the
Yeah.
portion of this country, right? So,
Yeah.
and then same thing with the trans issues. I mean, we agree we need to protect trans rights, but does it really make sense for us to spend an entire election cycle talking about less
Yeah.
than 1% of the population when it
Yeah.
comes to sports
Yeah.
specifically and women's
Our,
sports? Like, to me, that
mhm.
feels like a complete waste of our time.
Yeah. I was watching Bill Maher speak about trans. It was like some district in California, they don't need to report it to the parents if the kid is trans, the school doesn't. I'm sitting there, me and my wife, we don't have a kid, but I'm sitting there, I'm like, I want to know if my kid is transgender, and I want to know.
Of
And
course.
I was sitting there, I'm like, there's schools that don't have to report this, and I was getting like pretty worked up. I was like, no way, no shot. And then I sat there and I thought, what are the numbers on this? How much time in my day is now being consumed on this topic that I could probably count on maybe one hand that the instances of this coming up would be a problem. Not that, and I think it's important to say, because it affects so few people, we don't even need to talk about it. That's not what I'm saying. But maybe because it affects so few people, maybe we don't need to talk about it that much.
Yeah.
Like I
Doesn't need
just
to
feel
be a
like, yeah,
central issue. Yeah. And that's what
yeah,
we've made. We have made abortion and the trans rights issue are central issue in the Democratic Party, and
Yeah.
that has not worked for us. So why I
Hmm.
don't know why we keep sort of spinning our wheels on things that we know are not going to be popular. The same thing with Palestine and Israel. Palestine and Israel is a divisive issue inside the Democratic Party. So
Yeah.
why are we going to continue to bring up such a divisive issue that we know that we have so many people on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and we know that it's going to cause infighting. We know that, we're never going to come to a conclusion on it.
Yeah. And I think I was, we had, I work at an event space and we had a Jewish party or whatever. And I was speaking to the guy and I was talking to the host and I said, you know, just within this group of 200 Jews, what would, how has the political landscape looked for you guys? And he said, well, dude, we used to all be blue. He said, almost down the line, we were all blue. And he said, I'm still blue, but I've noticed, maybe a quarter or maybe, a third of my group now is sort of like leaving the left over all this rhetoric and everything like that. And this is an anecdote, it's a small instance, but I was just like, we we failed or made it such a central issue, Israel Palestine. It became so prevalent that it drove away at least a third of this group of 200 people. I
Yeah.
don't know, and I live here in Texas, so it's a very, very, very red place. I can't imagine what the numbers are like in more gray states. I don't know, or purple states. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think should be the central focuses of the left? The first one that comes to mind, one that I've written about a lot on Substack, is wealth inequality. I
Yeah.
think wealth inequality is schizophrenic, for lack of a better word, and
Hmm.
the numbers are horrifying. And I think it's because it's such a nuclear issue. We kind of just keep burying it because it's too. It's sort of like the environment. It's just
Yeah.
maybe it's so colossal of an issue we don't know where to start and we just ignore it. And so I
Yeah.
think wealth inequality comes to mind. But what do you think should be sort of the top three positions that the left is willing to confront?
Yeah, I think wealth inequality for sure. I agree with you on that. Increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I like nobody is arguing with that on either side anymore. Really, even Josh Hawley put forward a proposal to do this. So if this is something we can get people behind, why not? I think either Medicare for all or some kind of medical system that benefits its citizens more than it benefits the insurance companies.
Yeah,
Um, I think if we stick to those three that are all economically based, I think that we will see better results. And then obviously there are going to be some other issues that I think we're going to have to talk about, right? Like climate
yeah,
change is
yeah.
huge. We have to address climate change. Also, the good thing about climate change is that we're going to have very, very strong opposition from the Republicans on this, which to parents and to people that have young kids, they're going to be questioning why that is,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And I think that that could really bring our base together as well. So I think if we just sort of stick to those and we get rid of these, you know, the abortion stuff, the trans issues,
the culture war. Yeah,
the culture war, right? That I think we
yeah.
will be much better off in 26 and 28.
Yeah, when I look at a lot of those topics that you just mentioned, those are things that are very apolitical in that
Yes.
there's a lot of, one thing me and Kyla also spoke about is young men. I'm 25, so most guys my age, especially living here in Texas, most of my friends and most of the people my age voted Republican. And, there's this rumor, or maybe it's not a rumor, Kyla and we addressed it as a real serious thing, this male sort of abandonment of the 20, the 18 to 30-year-old man. Kind of where does he go? What's the place for him? He's been kind of ignored by the left, was something that Kyla really hammered in. And it made a lot of sense to me. I haven't encountered the issue head on that much, but looking at what a lot of the men deal with is like a lot of it can stem from economic issues. And you look at a lot of the messaging of the right, a lot of the messaging I see would have really resonated if it came from Obama, in 2008, like talking about, people can't afford simple necessities. People, look at your grocery prices, look at the
Mhm.
gas prices. You guys can't buy a home. Everyone's renting. And it
Mhm.
sounds very like if you stripped away all the ignorance from it, and if you gave it like a more sane voice, it could be coming from like a 2012 Democrat.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and like you look at all this rhetoric of like we shouldn't be sending our money to Ukraine, we should be spending it here. Like, what do you mean by that? You mean like social programs?
Yeah,
And
like
so
investing in our roads and our bridges, you know?
yeah, like wait, and so yeah, like, what you just mentioned about like wealth inequality, the 15-hour or the $15 minimum wage, and the Medicare. It's I saw a lot of people on the right even complaining about, now it's like the elites that run the insurance companies and all this stuff. Yeah, those are very apolitical, and it seems like the right has been able to capture a lot of the voter base on those issues. And I used to be so used to the left talking about economics. I hardly hear it anymore. I
Yeah,
really do. I don't hear it that much.
yeah,
Yeah.
since Bernie's been gone, I mean, out of the scene in terms of running a race at least, yeah, I really don't hear it either. So it's we really have to get back to that as quickly as we can.
And that is something that will get, everyone in all demographics, in all ages, because we're all pretty poor right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so midterms are coming up. You're probably extremely, extremely, extremely busy. I would say I'm a liberal. I've never really identified as a progressive. I I like Bernie. I don't think Bernie's feasible. You might disagree with me on that. I'm not the biggest AOC fan. I would vote for AOC over any Republican at this point. But
Yeah.
when I think there's a sort of a split down the middle of the left of, well, now there's liberals and there's also progressives. And some people we know, Destiny, for example, is very direct on saying, guys, progressives are not on your team. Don't worry about them. Ignore them. Push them away. This and that. When you look at midterms, what are your views right now? What do you think? Who do you think is looking good? I think Pete Buttigieg looks amazing. I like every time Gavin Newsom speaks. I like it. I think there's a conversation about how much does the state of your state reflect on the governor. I don't have the answer to that. I
Yeah.
don't know how responsible he is. He might be really responsible and that will make him lose credibility, or he might be, it might be out of his control. I don't really know. Regardless, that conversation might be a little too difficult. I don't think he'll be able to uh, push away the image of, sort of like these LA protests and everything and be able to run
Yeah.
effectively. But I do like when he talks. AOC and Bernie are now getting pretty big crowd sizes. What are your views on midterms? Who do you think's looking good? Who you got your money on?
I do think that we have a very good shot at winning the midterms if Trump continues down the path that he's continuing down, because I do think that people are going to hurt more economically. And I think when people hurt more economically, they end up voting for whatever party is not in charge at the time, right? Which in that case would favor us. Um, However, I don't think that it is a strong enough argument to say we will win the midterms. I think we have a lot of work that we have to put into it. And I also think that if we're going to get serious about 2026 and 2028, we need to get serious internally as a party about where our money is going, specifically to these PACs that are basically shell PACs that don't do anything, right? That's a really big problem in our party. And they're not going to funding people like us for voter registration. So we're having to do this literally like $25 at a time, which is very, very difficult when we're competing against a party and organizations like Turning Point USA that are $100+ million organizations. So I
Yeah.
think we're going to have to get serious about having that conversation. But I think that if we make the changes that we need to make internally and we actually get serious about our ground game, then I do think that we have a very good shot in 28. In terms of the candidates, I mean, I definitely think, I mean, Gavin Newsom's for sure running, right? Pete
Mm-hmm.
Buttigieg, I'm sure, is for sure running. I hope that AOC will run. And I think I think it's going to be a really good thing for us because I think that we need to have a competitive primary because I think that primaries is a good opportunity for us to really search inside our party and start to understand what really matters to us, right? And we
Yeah.
saw this during the 2020 election. And unfortunately, people were outraged because we didn't get a fair primary. We didn't get to see Bernie actually get through the process without Obama interfering in that process and without the establishment interfering in that process. So I really hope that 2028 is our first opportunity to have a really true primary in our
Yeah.
party and let whoever wins wins. And I think that whoever that person is, I think we'll have a really good shot to beat whoever the Republican is.
Yeah, good, good. So I spend most of my show is sort of catered to philosophy. I'm not the most politically literate, but I remember um, when Biden stepped down and Kamala or when Harris came forward, I, especially from a lot of my MAGA friends, they kept on mentioning, it's a coup, it's a coup, it's a coup. They didn't have a debate or anything. And without me reading anything online, without me looking at all into it, I just said, look how close we are to the election. We have no time. Biden stepped down. Harris is, the vice president, so she's already familiar with the platform. She's already familiar with the operations. If we had a debate, and if we got all of our, whatever governor wants to run, whatever like that, we all stuck them in a room and started new campaigns and new funding and all this stuff, it'd be so much work. So it
Yeah,
just makes
don't
sense
worry.
to put, yeah, it just makes sense that she steps up and is now the candidate.
Hmm.
Do you agree with me? Was there something I missed there?
No, yeah.
Was it just bad timing? Like, did Biden kind of fuck us by not stepping down sooner?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's hard for me to even blame Biden because I'm not even sure that Biden even wanted to run to begin with, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Huh.
I, I kind of I feel for Biden because, well, one, I think Biden's a great guy. I think he's like genuinely like a really good father. I think he's a really good person, and I think that he really loves this country. And I think that he's like a true public servant in every sense of the word. Do I agree with him politically on a lot of things? No, I don't. But that I think that that doesn't spare the fact of like who he is, and I think that if the donors hadn't pushed him so hard, this is my theory, obviously,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
I think that if the donors hadn't pushed him so hard to run, I don't think he would have. And I think that, unfortunately, I think that it was just a matter of crappy timing. I think that the donors probably were very hopeful until they saw him not even remember who George Clooney was when
Yeah.
he's known him for like 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
When he got up there and had that disastrous debate. And I think that by that point, it was pretty much like either Biden has got to go or we're going to lose, right? Like those are
Hmm.
the two options. And I think that they went with the safer of those two options and said, unfortunately, Biden's got to leave. And by that point, it was too
It's
late.
too late.
Even with things like technicalities, right? Just getting a new candidate on the ballot in every state that quickly is like $1 billion operation,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
Kamala already was on the ballot because she's the vice president. So you don't have to go through that whole process all over again. Same thing with the money that Biden raised. You can't just transfer, like, let's just say, like, Gavin Newsom got up in there and we did an open convention because that's what a lot of people
Hmm.
wanted. And he became the nominee for the open convention. You can't just transfer money from Biden to Gavin Newsom. It doesn't work like that, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that people don't really understand like how much work goes into these campaigns, how much technicalities you got to get around and ballot access and all of those things. Like
Yeah.
Kamala truly was the only option.
Yeah. When I step back, let me think of how I want to say this. When you mentioned your sort of your door-to-door campaigning, speaking to people directly and kind of doing this like very grassroots kind of operation, I sit here and I look at the optics of that, or how that might pan out. It seems hard for me because I look through history and I see a lot of instances of where maybe the majority of the country wants to go a particular way, but I don't, the donor class in quotes here, or the sort of these big giant PACs who have, the lobbyists, I guess you could say, sort of make both sides of the aisle vote in a way that might be contrary to their interests, or might maybe compromise on things that might be against their interests. My old professor, Dr. Dawson Barrett, just wrote a video called wrote a book called The Defiant, and he notes in it the sort of after Reagan, this neoliberal phase came where he notes that the leftist candidates sort of abandoned a lot of their um, a lot of their old focuses. And so, do you think that I guess what I'm asking is mechanically, how does going door to door, speaking with individuals, how does that actually translate to a big change in the voting numbers? Because
Yeah.
it seems like I'm not trying to be insulting, but just like if I had to do that, if I convinced 10 people in a day, or maybe even 20 people in a day, I'd say there's 350 million of us. I'm not doing anything. How do you?
Yeah.
I guess yeah. So how does that look? I just it's hard for me to visualize. Do they go talk to their friends and say, hey, this Z girl, or all of her friends, whatever, they all convinced me to vote this particular way, and you guys should too. Does it have word of mouth, or
There's
what
some
does
of
this look
that,
like?
right? And it very much depends on the community in which you're knocking, right? Because, like, for example, if you convince 20 people in a rural community, you're actually convincing like 200 people in that
Hmm.
community because everybody's so tight knit, they're so close, they talk all the time. But if you convince 20 people in Los Angeles, yeah, you're doing nothing essentially,
Yeah.
right? But it's really about like volume of ground game. And it's also about, we have to see it as less of convincing every voter, and more of targeting the voters that will affect the outcome of the election. And that's actually a much smaller percentage than what people think it is. So if you
Hmm.
convince 20 people a day in the 2000 election of Al Gore versus Bush, did you actually do anything? Like, yeah, if you were in Florida knocking
Yeah.
doors, yeah, you
That was
did,
very close. Very, very
essentially, right?
close.
So, and that's why, like, when we see elections, we have something that we say, we call it the field margin of error, or like the
Hmm.
another way to say it would be like yeah, I mean that's pretty much what we say. We call it the field margin of error, which essentially means that this race can be determined or can be flipped within like 1 or 2%, right? It's a purple district. So that
Hmm.
means that in order for us to flip that 1 to 2%, we're only talking about a very small pool of voters, and we can actually get down to the nitty gritty now. This field operations is not what it was 15 years ago when I first started. When I first started knocking doors in New York City, 2011, 2012, around that time, we didn't have anything, right? Like we had paper, clipboard, and like that was it. Like,
Hmm.
best of luck. Now we can get down, I mean, honestly, to the point where it's actually creepy, right? Like I could look you up and I can find where you're streaming, what you're watching, who you're interacting. I can see those things now on the back end through a lot of these companies. So then I can determine, is Jack actually an undecided voter? Is he even worth talking to? And if the answer is no, then we don't waste our time on it, right? But we didn't have that type of data 10, 15 years ago. So
Hmm.
field operations has changed a lot because of
Wow.
our technology that is changing.
That's impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's. I mean, that is really interesting to know. You don't need to waste time on people who, I mean, and probably every minute counts when you're
Yeah.
going door to door. So one
Yeah.
thing I wanted to mention earlier was what earlier we were talking about the candidates and sort of the platform that Biden had and the platform that Harris had. To me, it strikes me that if you ask me after I've had a couple beers, you ask me what should be the primary position of the next candidate. You ask me, I would say just be anti-Trump. That doesn't work though. I know that doesn't work. I'm past that. It's just to me that seems, because I look at what Trump does, I look at how he handles our funds, what he's done to our institutions, how no one trusts our institutions. I look at the hypocrisy. I look at the one that just makes my brain itch is the conflict of interest. I mean, the
Yeah.
crypto, the meme coins, the Vietnamese golf resort, the making. I think I just saw David Frum, who is generally a conservative, noted how Trump makes secret services stay in his private property and pay for them and all this stuff. I look at all this and I just say, okay, well, the candidate just needs to show that they won't do that. That's not good enough. Do you think that the left has been kind of piggybacking on this, well, I'm not Trump kind of position? Has that been something that you've noticed as an issue?
Oh yeah, I mean that's been our central messaging for the past 10 plus years, and it didn't work the first time. It
Hmm.
hardly worked the second time. We won by a tiny little smidge, right?
Hmm.
And it didn't work the third time. So I think that we got to sort of get away from this. I'm not Trump, because Trump is winning. And if we are
Mhm.
consistently just against the person that they have traditionally supported, it's not going to work. So instead, we need to focus on the reality of where we are at as working class Americans. Like, we need to acknowledge, like what you were saying, the gas prices are too high, the grocery prices are too high. One could even argue that Trump won based on like the cost of eggs, right? Like that
Yeah.
was like a huge part of his messaging of his campaign. And it seems like from an outside perspective that that's just ridiculous, right? Like, what
Mhm.
do you mean somebody could win based on the cost of eggs? But it was a big part of the campaign, and people
Yeah.
were using that as talking points, and it was spreading on social media. And it's something that the average American pays attention to, because when the cost of eggs go up, that affects their lives, right? In a way that
Yeah.
to us, maybe as like intellectuals or as campaigners, seems ridiculous, but as an average working person is not.
Yeah, yeah. So we've spoken a lot about the rights in fighting and kind of how their voter base is acting and thinking through a lot of these things. One thing, and I asked you if you'd be comfortable to talk about this, and you said we could. Within the Unfuck America tour, sort of just right after you got started, you guys had some internal issues going on there. I followed it a little bit. I don't know all the details. Would you mind? And the reason I wanted to bring this up, and I think I mentioned this, was um, I think what happened internally with the Unfuck America tour might be a very good learning opportunity for the rest of the left, whether it be
Yeah.
progressives or liberals, whatever. I think this is something we can all learn from. It helps us see what the real problems are and what we can do to, win 2028 and win our 2026 midterms. So
Yeah.
what exactly, spend as much time as you want to and feel comfortable with. What exactly happened in the Unfuck America tour? How did you recover? And what does the future of your tour look like?
Yeah, so it's interesting because one of my friends, like sort of the height of all of this drama, was like, "Oh wow, Z, you broke the left," and I was like, "What does that mean?" And she was like, "You have started a conversation that is like the last thing you ever wanted to start as a professional
Hmm.
campaigner, but might be like the conversation that like needed to be had."
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
for the 2026 elections. And actually, I completely agree with that. And at the time, I didn't, because I was sort of in this like, oh my God, like, how could I have started this infighting that I'm like firmly against? But now that I look back on it, I'm very much glad that it happened. And so basically, to give people sort of the synopsis of what happened in short form, and you could actually, there's a lot of really good resources out there. Brad Colombo, he has a show called Everybody Hates Brad. He did a really good segment on this. Destiny did a bunch of them as well that you could probably link, that people could find out more. That's a lot more in depth. But the short version is that when we went on this tour, or when we started this, I was not by any means an influencer or a political creator of any kind. I started TikTok about, actually, on the debate day, the debate that was the downfall of Joe Biden, was my very first TikTok, so about a year ago.
Hmm.
And I really just was like posting just to give people information about how to run campaigns. That's my handle is Z Runs Campaigns. It was very much cut and dry in that way. I'd sometimes attack Republicans, but that was about it. And so when I started looking for political influencers for this tour, I didn't have any sort of idea around any of this like nuanced conversation happening in the online space, because I'm not much of a scroller. I'm not really on social media, and I was very new to it. So when I was reaching out to these creators, I wasn't thinking about, oh, are they left? Are they too far left? Are they liberal? Or are they progressive? Or any of those things, right? I just thought, we all hate Charlie Kirk. We all agree on this.
Mhm.
So let's all fight that, right? And so, but I was very wrong by that, very, very wrong. And so I got all these people, and really there was no sort of rhyme or reason for how I picked creators. I just reached out to people that I personally followed from political TikTok that I thought had good content, had good sort of policy positions and what they believed in, and specifically people that had already actually made content against Charlie Kirk. And so what I didn't realize at the time was that I was bringing in people that were on all kinds of places in the left, which caused a lot of issues internally, which we saw pretty much straight away. I mean, literally from the second everybody got together. And I think like when it was happening, I thought to myself, oh, well, when we meet in person, things will be different. Or, when we actually see the success of this tour, things will be different. And I was very wrong by that. And so about 4 days before the tour, or 4 or 5 days before we actually left to go to Texas A&M, I had joined a live, which I had done all the time. I was always doing lives where I'm yelling at Republicans or whatever, having conversations. And it was a group of women who were very firmly criticizing the tour. And,
Hmm.
I'm used to criticism. I have no problem with
Sure.
criticism. I
Sure.
usually just ignore it for the most part. But the way in which they were criticizing it was, I mean, just things that were like blatantly not true. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I came in there with sort of, I would say maybe a little bit of an attitude for sure.
Yeah.
A bit,
Understandable.
yeah, about people saying things like, "Oh, we're so disorganized" and things like that when we haven't even gone on tour yet. So like, how would they
Hmm.
know? And I didn't realize at the time that I was entering into a room of Black women. They were not all
Hmm.
Black, just to be specific.
Yeah.
That's a rumor too that has continued. But when I actually entered into the room, the first argument I had was with the white guy. So
Hmm.
they were
Yeah.
not all Black women, but the majority were.
It was
And
Dean, right? Was it Dean that
no, no,
you?
no. The original guy I was arguing with was just, I can't even remember his name. He was just he didn't really have a following. He was just
Sure.
some random like white leftist
Hmm.
guy.
Hmm.
And we were sort of in a back and forth. And then somewhere along the line, a couple days after that live, people started saying that I was microaggressing against Black women. That was the narrative that started.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the creators were, I'd ask the creators, I'd ask them like, hey, should I apologize publicly for like, what should I do? And they were all like, no, you need to ignore it, move on. Like, let's go to the tour. Let's do our thing. And then when we got to the tour, it was very successful. I mean, Dean Withers had, like 35 million views on one of his videos from us. I think on Instagram, it hit like 50 million. Between all of our creators, we had over 100 million views. So we like completely just like took over
Success.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was great. It was exactly what we wanted. That was the goal of the tour, was to get high views, high donation rates, and that all happened, and that was great. But then when we got back, I guess that there was this like pressure that the creators were feeling because of this backlash, that then they decided, without my knowledge, that they were all going to publicly come out and call me a microaggressor and leave the tour. And this
Hmm.
was headed by Dean, who, I think had his own kind of nefarious like
Agenda.
agenda, yeah, of like thinking that that because this was successful, maybe he could take over the pack and do this on his own and make more
I mean,
money
yeah,
doing.
he's a young guy, and I think the first thing was like a Jubilee video with him,
Yes,
and
yeah,
obviously I'm very low on the creator scale, but when I watched him and he went from 0 to 1 million really quickly in terms of following, I was like, I hope he doesn't get ahead of himself. And I
yeah.
think on your tour he might have gotten ahead of himself just
Oh
a
yeah,
little
he
bit. I don't, but yeah,
definitely
but go on.
definitely got ahead of himself. And so, I my sort of reaction to this was let them do what they're going to do, let them behave the way they want to behave. And I was very lucky that very shortly after that, a lot of creators came to my aid, much bigger
Good.
than Dean, people like Destiny, people like Brad, other people as well. And I think what ended up really happening was this like fraction then of the left, because now it's not Z with 70,000 followers. Who the hell is this girl? Right? Like this like random person. It's now Dean, 3 million followers versus Destiny with millions of followers. Right. And they're having their sort of, like conversation around this, right? And then Dean is not wanting to debate Destiny on this, and then that sort of brings up a whole other conversation, right? And that's sort of where it left off. And then we decided that we were going to take a whole different direction, and that we were going to go after people that were very much electorally focused. And since then, we've had no issues, because even though, yes, our group is very diverse in terms of some of us are on the side of Israel, some are on the side of of Palestine. Some of us are open borders, some of us are not. We have very different ideologies, but at the end of the day, we all believe that electorally, it is the most important thing that we win elections, and is the most important thing that we stop Charlie Kirk. So I think
Hmm.
that's why we haven't had these issues moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. All right, I'm going to be respectful of your time, but I do have, I think, one or two more questions, real quick.
Yeah.
What is your biggest worry right now with the right? I mean, I know there's a whole buffet you can pick from of things that are probably really pissing you off. What do you think is the most egregious? I've had a very boring position where I just said, I feel like in the wheelbarrow full of horrible stuff that Trump has ever done, I still really just drive home January 6th. I think I've read too much on that. I think I've seen too much on it. I think I've overinvested, and I don't think anyone cares about it anymore. I don't even really hear people on the left talking about January 6th anymore. I just think that, to me, and again, this is how out of touch I am. I think that's all I've ever needed. It clearly isn't. I clearly need something else to talk about. Um, I wrote a very, very, very long Substack article, kind of walking through almost day by day for like 60 days of what exactly happened around January 6th, the months leading up to it and the months after it. Um, it's just not, no one cares, right? So when you look at the right and all of their, when you look at MAGA, I should say, what do you think are their biggest, what is the biggest trespass that they've done? Is it the crypto? Is it the defying judge, Supreme Court rulings? Is it the suppression of? I mean, doesn't he want to sue, um, like liberal or left leaning content creators? I don't know. Like, what is your biggest worry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the attack on our press is huge, but even more
Hmm.
than that, I think my worry as like a professional campaigner and our ability to stop people like Charlie Kirk and the far right is their media conglomerate.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think we can have a ground game that matches them, if not better? Yes, I do. But the biggest issue is it even possible for us to match their energy in the media space? And I don't know if it is, because the problem
Mm.
is like we don't have Brett Coopers and Ben Shapiro's and Charlie Kirk's, and I mean it's like the list just goes on and on. And then on top of that, the fact that they are all in such strong lockstep with each other, right?
Yeah.
Like as soon as or as soon as Trump says something, then Charlie says something, then Ben says something, then everybody within seconds, right?
Yeah.
Or even all their small creators, even their people that are down to 5K followers, they set them up in these group chats and they get them all collaborating with each other and they reward them. And we don't have any infrastructure like that on the
Yeah.
left. None. So
Yeah.
that's my biggest fear, is that, I don't even know if that's something that money can buy, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest.
And I think there's an ethical conversation to happen around it too. We opened up with talking about infighting, and when I look at this, I think, well, it would be effective if we all were sort of interconnected like the right is. But on the other hand, it's very disingenuine, right? Like if Ben Shapiro or Charlie Kirk or Steven Crowder wake up with their new marching orders and they say them, that's effective, but it doesn't strike me as good. It
No,
doesn't
it's not
strike me as something
good.
I would want. I wouldn't want to be known as the party where the orders come down from the pipe and then they just kind of we all fall in line. But I get this sort of doomer view of it, of it's either, and me and Kyla kind of spoke about this, and I debate with some people on the left about this, and I'm very undecided. When do you think the left has to start playing like the right does, with maybe sort of like this disingenuous narrative, sort of trying to come up with like culture war narratives? Do you think we have to do this, or do you think we can have a way to maintain our integrity but also be effective?
I think we can maintain our integrity and be effective, because I see that yes, the right is willing to do more, right? Like they're willing to be in lockstep more, but there are people that are outsiders, right? Like there are the Candace Owens, and they do have these people, they exist. And I think that we can have that on the left, but we also have to, the issues that we can all get behind, we have to start getting behind in the media space, right? Like,
Hmm.
there should be no reason that anybody is fighting against a $15 hour minimum wage.
Yeah.
Plain and simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Should be no reason why people are arguing against Medicare for all or some form of system that allows people to not go bankrupt when they go to the hospital.
Hmm.
If we can get behind issues like this and we can all be in lockstep with each other around issues like this, then there is space for us to say, well, maybe, we don't agree on whatever the issue is, right? Like maybe we don't fully agree on abortion, or maybe and
Sure.
that's okay. But I do think that right now we don't even have the infrastructure to even agree on the issues that we agree on
Hmm.
publicly.
So, do you ever argue with people when you're on your tour? Do you go and meet, MAGA and actually debate them sort of face to face? Do you do that?
Me personally, or like our
Yeah,
critics?
or are you yes, or are you more kind of in the background, kind of,
Oh no, I'm too
managing
busy
people?
for that.
Yeah.
I'm like booking I'm doing the slave labor.
Uh-huh.
Somebody, that's the thing that I think a lot of people like don't understand too, is that we don't have a massive staff. We have one full-time person at our pack, and I do this for free. I do it because I believe in this, and like I'm the person that's booking the hotels and the flights and calling the college campuses and like doing all that. So yeah, I'm not really like a debater.
Mhm.
But I do want to create a platform where professional debaters on our side can be better heard,
Yeah.
and to uplift some of those smaller creators too, because we have a tier 2 program now of people that have under 50,000 followers, and we want to start to help those people to grow their platforms bigger the same way they do on the right.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is because one thing I deal with, especially, I'm in a religious community here in Texas, and so I encounter, I hate that I gotta link the conspiracy theories to the religious community, but I can't ignore the facts. One thing is that I see with MAGA just a lot of it's just a fire hose of conspiracies. And I mean, you mentioned Candace Owens. I think she's getting sued by the wife of the
The French
French
president. Yeah.
for claiming that the wife of the French president is a man,
Yeah.
and she's kind of doubling down on it. She also thinks Mossad agents are after her, and I mean, you're more familiar than I am with all the conspiracy theories on the right. Have you equipped people to address these? Do you kind of tell people like, hey, if they start off talking about geoengineering the weather or the COVID chips, just ignore them. Go to someone who's more able to be reached. Is that kind of your approach right now? Is kind of like when you meet the flat earthers on the right, you kind of just go, okay, next.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
listen, there's a woman on TikTok, and she's like all over the internet. Her name is Abby Richards, and she does all of her content is centered around the conspiracy chart, right? And like where you fall on the conspiracy chart, and where is sort of the point of no return, where you literally cannot be converted unless you pull yourself out of it. And it's very interesting because she sort of starts with like, there's some like innocent conspiracies, right? Where it's
What's her
like,
name?
her name's Abby Richards.
Hmm.
And so she's like, there's some innocent conspiracies that she would call them, where it's like UFOs are potentially real, innocent conspiracy, or
Sure.
Avril Lavigne has been dead for the past 20 years and is actually a woman named Jessica, right? Like more innocent conspiracy. But then we sort of reach the level of um, where
Hurricane
it's like,
building.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah. But there's this, she calls it the anti-Semitic point of no return. And that's where you
Yeah.
get into this like red zone, and that's where the flat earthers live, Pizzagate, all of
Mm-hmm.
those, right? And
Yeah.
at that point, yeah, there's no point talking to those people because they are
Okay.
so deep in their own minds that nothing that you ever will say will get them out.
Hmm.
But there are people that are sort of on the path where they're starting on the innocent
You can
conspiracies,
intercept it. Oh.
yeah, that you can intercept. And so, yeah, and one of the things that we notice very strongly in the red pill pipeline is how they get women through the red pill pipeline,
Yeah.
specifically young women. And they do this through like clean eating, right? And through wellness, they call it. And this is just like, it's just code really for they sort of bridge them into clean eating, and then all of a sudden you are anti-vaxxer, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden you are a fan of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And it kind
Yeah.
of goes like that. So we do have those conversations. We are planning to have more of those conversations with young women on campus so that they can identify where that red pill pipeline is leading for them and how to not fall into that. Because honestly, there's nothing wrong with being a yoga girl and clean eating and
Yeah.
all of those things. Like if you are into those things, that's fine. But you also have to realize that there will be a point where you are getting brainwashed through that pipeline, and to
Yeah.
just be aware of when that's happening.
Yeah. My wife, it's interesting you bring this up. My wife, she does the whole sourdough thing. She does the whole diffusers with essential oils. Our grocery bill's like $500 a time. But there was one piece of content that reached her on Instagram, and it was something about like being able to make your sourdough, eat clean, sort of have this maybe holistic, I guess you could say, lifestyle, but also not be like a right winger. And she
Yes.
really loved this one piece of content, and but she hasn't been able to find anything else like that. And I'm not one to give advice, but that is something I think there's more people out there. I don't think my wife is the only one out of 350 million Americans. There's probably other women and guys too. I mean, like one thing I noticed on the right is like the men on the left don't exercise. You can
Gym
work
bro
out on
culture.
you can work out on the right and also or you can work out as a man and also vote left. Like
Yeah.
you don't need, it's not like
Apparently not, according
do
to
I
TikTok.
exercise or do I vote left? You don't have
Right.
to you don't got to be
Am
there.
I a
All right.
loser or not?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, well, Z, this has been great. I'll have a link to donate to your tour. I'll personally be donating some money as well.
Thank
Um,
you.
where can people find you, and what are you? One thing I was wondering is I wasn't able to find a tour schedule. Is there a plan to come to Texas at all? Or are you? I know you just came from A&M, but are there any plans to hit here again or go anywhere else? What's
Oh, yeah,
next?
for sure. Texas, we will definitely be back in Texas because you guys are one of the most important states. But basically, the plan right now is that when we do the event, so like Student Action Summit, the Women's Leadership, and America Fest, we always just rent a bar in the area, and then we do debates there, and we pull the kids in from Turning Point USA. So it's a little bit different
Nice.
from a college campus tour. The next one will be America Fest, and that's the biggest event of the year.
Yeah.
So Trump is going to be there.
Yeah.
Fuentes is everybody's going to be there.
Yeah. America Fest
So
is
we
crazy.
it is
Yeah.
great, yeah. So it's going to be in Phoenix. It's always in Phoenix, and we'll be renting a bar in the area, and we'll be putting tickets up for sale next week. And so, highly encourage people to sign up for those tickets. They're going to sell out really fast because, unfortunately, there are not very large venues around there.
Hmm.
But we are hopeful that we can sell out a couple different places. So definitely keep on the lookout for that. And then before that, Charlie, at least traditionally, he's always done the fall campus tour. So
Hmm.
hopefully he's doing that again. And if that's the case, then we will go on a couple of stops on the fall college campus tour before that.
Good. Okay. Well, keep up the good work, and your social media will be tagged below. Do you write anywhere, or are you just too busy doing scheduling and stuff like that?
I do Substack occasionally.
Good.
I'm trying
Okay.
to get more into it, but yeah, I've done a couple of
Good.
those, and we'll try to do more.
Good. Okay. Well, again, keep it up, and people will be able to find you. So, thank you for your time today, and
Thank you.
we'll see what you're up to next time.
Appreciate it.